There have been many changes in the regional aviation fleet over the last couple of years, and there are more to come. Our next panel covers the multi-billion-dollar decisions ahead, including how and when the next generation of aircraft innovation will appear. Leading this panel is Pilar Wolfsteller, an accomplished reporter and the America's Air Transport editor with Flight Global. Pilar is a pilot and has extensive experience with Bloomberg and Reuters. She's reported from more than 50 countries. Pilar, thank you for taking time to be with us. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Pilar and her esteemed panelists. Thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you, Faye. Thanks for inviting me back. I was here last year as well. As Faye said, this panel is about the global outlook for OEMs. What are the trends, risks, and opportunities facing global users of regional aircraft? How will fleets change in the next decade? And how will sustainability be a factor? So there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm really excited to hear what our panel of experts has to say about all of these topics. They all have very different approaches and potential solutions, and I'm looking forward to a lively discussion. So we have here today Val Miftakhov, the CEO of ZeroAvia, which develops hydrogen electric zero emissions propulsion systems. And it's currently flying a 19-passenger Dornier 228 converted to run partly on hydrogen fuel cells. It's hoping to certify its ZA600 powertrain in the coming months, enabling commercial service by 2025. ZeroAvia was named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential companies in 2023. We've also got Ross Mitchell, VP Strategy of Business Development, Marketing, Communications, and Business Operations of Canadian company MHIRJ, a division of Mitsubishi that acquired the CRJ program from Bombardier in 2020. MHIRJ supports the global fleet of CRJs and has been collaborating with ZeroAvia to develop hydrogen-powered modified CRJs. We also have Zuzana Hernikova, VP of Marketing for Toulouse-based turboprop maker ATR, a joint venture between Leonardo and Airbus. Since 1981, the company has built and delivered to more than 200 airlines in 100 countries. And at the moment, it's flying about 60 aircraft in the USA, which is passenger and freighters, and is looking to increase that number. Though turboprops have kind of fallen out of favor in North America, it's important to note that they burn less fuel and emit less CO2 than a similarly sized regional jet, which could assist the US in helping us reach our aviation emissions reductions targets. And we also have Simon Newitt, President and Chief Commercial Officer of Heart Aerospace. It was founded in 2018 and is based in Sweden. They're developing a 30-seat all-electric regional aircraft, and that will have a fully electric zero emissions range of about 110 nautical miles, and it has flexibility to fly up to 450 nautical miles with 25 passengers, including typical airline reserves. Among Heart's investors are Misa Air Group and United Airlines Ventures. And we do also have a last-minute addition to our panel, and that is Nigel Patterson, currently Vice President of Marketing and Sales at Embraer Commercial Aircraft, a role he assumed just a few months ago after spending more than 3 decades at Airbus. His focus is on the North American market. And as we all know, the company is also working on clean sheet, low emission aircraft, including those with hydrogen, all electric, and hybrid electric propulsion through its Energia program. We hope to learn more about that today as well. So just yesterday, Embraer announced that American Airlines has also joined Energia. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks to you all for participating. We're going to ask some questions to have a discussion here, and we'd love to get some audience participation towards the end, so think about your questions right now already. As we all know, regional aircraft is in a bit of a crisis. You've been talking about it here yesterday and today, with smaller communities losing air service due to a host of issues, including financial constraints and a severe pilot shortage. Numerous manufacturers have also stopped producing small regional aircraft. Hundreds of aircraft have been parked, and in the past couple of years, more than 70% of communities across the nation have experienced a reduction in air service or lost it completely. Those communities then also suffer the economic consequences when companies move their headquarters or their satellite offices away to find better transportation connectivity. It's a major inconvenience for the people who live there. People end up driving longer distances to get to where they have to go. So we're not here to talk about pilot training or the pilot shortage, right? We've talked about that before. There's going to be another panel about that later. But what we'd love to hear from our experts is their take on the future aircraft that are going to serve these smaller communities and take on these shorter routes that are becoming less and less financially viable for traditional stinky aircraft. The industry has committed to reducing its emissions in the coming years, so sustainability is a really big part of this discussion. So like I said, I want this to be a discussion. I'm going to throw out a first question to you guys. I want you to talk about it amongst yourselves. Please jump in when you feel like you have something to say. And my first question for all the panelists is going to be, what are your thoughts on how your company can contribute to the solutions to some of these issues I've raised, especially with regard to the regional aviation crisis we have here in the USA? Why don't we start with you, Nigel?
Well, certainly we have a family of aircraft in the Energia that ranges from 9 to 50 passengers. This is a program that we believe in, where we're not focused on any one technology going forward. We're looking at hybrid, we're looking at fully electric, we're looking at hydrogen. So as an aircraft manufacturer, we absolutely know what it takes to deliver and certify aircraft, right? So when we're looking at our Energia family, as I said, we're not focused on any particular technology, but we know how to do this. So as these technologies mature and get better, we see a pathway for us to deliver to our customers, the regional aircraft flyers, that are here today. So yeah, we believe we have a pathway to support what will be a necessary component for the sustained travel that we see in North America. As you said about the regional changes that we've been seeing in the marketplace, we have a need for these markets to be served, right? There is no way that we're not going to be able to serve these markets. So we believe that the regional sector will level, and we believe there will be those opportunities for markets to develop, and having the right, efficient aircraft will be the key to making this work.
Simon, tell us about HART and how you're contributing.
So, well, thank you for inviting us to the panel. So, yeah, at HART Aerospace, we're in the process of developing a 30-seat, just a small correction, it's a hybrid electric aircraft. So, you know, there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of debate around the technologies. Our view is just to get on with it. There is a need to address market demand. We think that the demand is there. We think that regional aviation generally has come under a lot of pressure over the years. One of the main reasons for that is economics. So, you know, it becomes very difficult for the airlines to really return to make money on some of these very, very small, thin routes. And that's why so many routes have ceased to exist here. I think statistics show there are sort of 5,000 airports in the United States, of which only 500 are actually, you know, accommodating commercial service. So there's huge opportunity, infrastructure's there, and you know, if we can bring to market a product that achieves the economics pillar that the airlines are looking for, we think we can turn the trend. I think there's a way to unlock demand, and this is not really a replacement gig alone. This is a new market opportunity play. So economics are key. I think when we look around the world, some regions of the world are more in tune with the green credentials, the environmental piece. I think here in the US, you know, when we talk to the airlines, it's all about the economics. So we're absolutely focused on bringing to market an aircraft in that size with an economic proposition that can make commercial operations sustainable. So we're on track. We're powering ahead. You know, we often say that the innovation is just getting it done. So, you know, we're excited to be here and to raise our profile. Thank you.
Susanna, please.
Thank you, Pilar. So ATR, we have a family of aircraft, ATR 42, 50-seater, with an option which can fly also, take off and land on 800 meters, so stall. Then we have a 72, larger module. So the airlines can use those two modules as a dynamic capacity, open new routes with the 42, go to explore new markets, and once there is a traffic, deploy the 72, the larger module. And then we have also the freighter version, so the family of the aircraft. And as Pilar mentioned, our family of aircraft is the most efficient economically, and also in terms of environmental credential, regional aircraft available today. And for US, we have heard during those 2 days on degraded regional connectivity. So in past 20 years, more than 800 routes completely disappears from the network. And we also see more than half, so which means roughly 400 small regional jets which retired after the pandemic. So we see that there is a great potential for our aircraft to place on this replacement wave with the environmental credentials. And just to remind that we don't need to wait 10, 15 years for new technology, but to act now, because with 45% less CO2 emissions on our aircraft, we can save immediately like 8 million pounds of ton of CO2 today. Then I would like to remind that already today we have 50% sustainable aviation fuel capability. Some operators in Europe are already using this capability for their operations. We are talking about Sweden, for example, or more like environmentally driven airlines. And we are working on 100% SAF capability, which will bring CO2 emissions to single digit in 2 years' time. So we target to have 100% SAF capability in 2 years' time. So we can act now. We don't need to wait. And on top, as a mid-term, we are working on like an improvement of our platform. We call our project Evolution, because what we have understood is that for the airlines, it's important to maintain operating cost, unit cost at the right level to allow the affordability of the tickets. We talk about inflation. So we taken more a realistic approach, and we are working on evolution of our platform with re-engine aircraft, and also with a small hybridation to allow better takeoff and integration in air traffic control, and with also 100 SAF capability with a non-drop in SAF. And this project, we target to enter into the service by 2030. So solution now, and also we have a mid and longer term solution to US market.
Excellent. I'm going to hear more about that later. I'd like to move on to Val, who works for Zero Avia, one of the more exciting projects that is out there right now. Can you talk a little bit about some of these solutions that
Thanks,
you guys
Pilar,
have?
of course. So we think at Zero Avia that you really need more than incremental approach to these problems. So you talked about economics, you talked about the routes closing, you talked about sustainability. And when you look at the root cause of all this, it's the type of fuel and the efficiency of the propulsion. And the sustainability of propulsion. So what we are doing at Zero Avia, we're solving all these problems from the first principles perspective, fundamental solutions. So it's about new propulsion systems, new fuel. So we are first and foremost, we're propulsion company. We build engines, as Pilar mentioned. We have flown multiple prototypes already, starting from 6 seats early in 2019 in the US, and now 20-seater, full size for our first launch vehicle, which we're going to launch with Textron, who's a full partner on the co-development, co-certification, hopefully by end of 2025. And Cessna Caravan and similar vehicles are, of course, world's largest sort of fleet of small aircrafts. Then fast follow 2027 with larger turboprops, similar to the ATRs, and hopefully even ATRs at that point. The reason we chose hydrogen electric is that if you look at the fundamental challenges of aviation from the sustainability and economics perspective, you really realize that you need to get away from combustion. Because in addition to CO2 challenge, which you can partially solve with sustainable aviation fuels, you also have non-combustion, or combustion artifacts that are non-CO2. Nitrous oxides, particulate emissions that are all very potent climate agents. And in order to get away from that, you need to get away from combustion. The only way to get it is electricity. The only way to get enough electricity on board is through a carrier like hydrogen. So what we do is hydrogen on board the aircraft, fuel cells to convert to electricity, and then electric motors running the propulsors. That is also, by the way, 2 to 3 times more efficient way to utilize the energy than combustion cycle. So small engine that we're running in our 20-seater right now, or 19-seater, is about 50-60% efficient, depending on the flight cycle. And that's compared with the PT6 engine that in that aircraft is maybe 22-25% efficient. So really significant efficiency benefit, which translates into, of course, economic benefits as well. So we're thinking about this as we are going to reset the economic cycle. So a lot of these problems with closing the routes, reducing the frequency are all economic problems. So if we can drive the economics from ever lowering cost of renewable and 3x the efficiency of the power plant, we can reset the economics of the regional travel so much that we can see the reinvigoration of that. And we're working with multiple OEMs, so of course MHRJ included here, Textron I mentioned. We just closed our latest round where Airbus came in as well as a great supporter of the company, and a number of others. So really with the first launches in 2025 and 70-seat launches in 2027, I think there's a bright future for solving all those problems.
Great. Ross,
Thanks.
what's your opinion on
I'm going
this?
to answer your question in sort of 2 pieces. One, what we're doing today to help people in the room, and what we're doing for the future to help people in the room. And really, MHIRJ is a company that's 1,500 people, and regional aviation is in our DNA. That's where we come from. And so today, what we can do to help you, it's about economics. What you need is the best economics possible, and we are the largest maintenance provider for regional jets in the world. And so we're making sure the fleet continues to fly. And in our view, the best way in the short term, until solutions like Val talks about come online to be sustainable, is fly the fleet you have. Right? Fly the fleet you have as efficient as possible. So we're making sure that MHIRJ is providing the service needed for our customers to continue keeping regional jets in the air. And by the way, it's not just CRJs. We're also doing Embraer maintenance at our facility in West Virginia now. We believe that we have to look after the entire regional market today, so there is a regional market in the future. For the future, we have an engineering team that's working with Val and his company to make sure that innovative technologies can find their way into the space. I mean, a lot of what happens in aviation comes from the engine manufacturers, right? And I worked on a program called the C-Series. That was really a program about engine, right? It was about delivering 10 to 15%. It was incremental, Val. It wasn't something like what you're doing. But we need to work with the innovative engine manufacturers to bring that forward, and that's what we're doing for the future, for the regional industry. But right now, with the challenges in play, we make sure we're cooperating with all of our partners to make sure the messages are heard here in DC and elsewhere, and make sure the airplanes are flying.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned engines, and propulsion systems. I'd love to hear from Hart, especially, and Zero Avia. I mean, aircraft and power plant certification is incredibly difficult, right? It takes a really long time. There are a lot of rules to follow. Certification is expensive. What makes you confident that this technology is going to be real and in service in a couple of years? I mean, we know that the FAA sometimes works at a glacial pace, right? What makes you confident that this time around it's going to be different? Simon?
Maybe I can start. So we at Zero Avia, we've been working with the regulators for the last 4 years, at least. All right, so we've flown our first prototype in 2019 in the US, and then flown 2 other prototypes with escalating level of flight permits. Right, so the first one was experimental FAA, experimental R&D, which is arguably the lowest level of scrutiny for the small aircrafts. Then we've flown in the UK under CAA E conditions, which is the next level, and now the aircraft that we're flying is under the full flight permit in the UK, which is normally done for pre-production airplanes or for pre-certification airplanes to do the market surveys, for example, right? So just before the certification. So really high level of scrutiny. We got regulators very familiar with our technology, lots of subject matter expert engagement there over the last 4 years in the escalating fashion, right? And these are exactly the same people that we'll be working with on the certification. We're looking to submit our first variant of the engine for certification in the next couple of months, in fact. And there's going to be submissions to the FAA and the CAA authorities under some of the submissions already under existing established special conditions for electric propulsion systems, for example, in the US that were established over the last years. We're looking to certify under Part 33 power plants with special conditions, and then installation into aircraft and adaptation to aircraft under the STCs, where all these partnerships with the OEMs are super impactful, right? So we are the only company that has that level of partnerships with the manufacturers of the aircraft, and we think that's absolutely critical to get the aircraft with our engines actually in market on time, right? Because you can imagine Textron has done a lot of work like this, right? Mitsubishi has done a lot of work like this, and similarly other manufacturers.
Simon?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been working with EASA for a number of years now. I think the key, we're a little bit further back in terms of development. We're entering into service before the end of the decade. So we're in that conceptual design going to preliminary design review. So it's a lot of technical familiarization, meetings with the EASA, getting them familiar with what we're doing. And I think to your point, partnerships are key. So we're a startup, right? This is going to be our first product. We've just understood how complicated, how difficult, how costly it is to certify aircraft. We're under no illusion. So for our first program, it's all about selecting good partners that we can collaborate with. So we've already announced a collaboration with BAE Systems. We're going to be helping us on the battery management system. Next in line is more information to be announced around the propulsion system. So we really believe in a collaborative, strong partnership approach and being very clear and consistent with the authorities. We also encourage more collaboration between EASA and FAA. So we would like to see concurrent certification at some point. So having that open dialogue between these two authorities, we feel is really important in order to help expedite as we go through.
Jill, do you have anything to add?
Well, I'm hopeful that what you've laid out will actually come to pass. Being an aircraft manufacturer, we know we do that today. We're in bed with our regulatory agencies. We understand them well. And this is why when we look at the future and all the options that are out there, we're more pragmatic, I would say, and more realistic about some of the technologies. We certainly hope that hydrogen technologies, the battery technologies will advance to a point that will allow us to get there in 2027, 2028, as you propose. We're in lockstep with all those technologies, right? We're already developing aircraft. We're already manufacturing aircraft in the marketplace. We have solutions today. For example, we have the E2-175. Unfortunately, with the scope clauses, and because it's a heavier aircraft, we can't put it into service. But that aircraft today can deliver real savings, right? Much better than we have with the 175 E1. So we have aircraft that are available today to deliver, real life economics and better options for the environment. So yeah, it's really aggressive what these gentlemen are proposing, but we're a little bit more realistic about where the technologies are, and we are very much familiar with the complexities of the regulatory agencies.
So we often, we're not apologetic for being aggressive. I think, the incumbents are very incumbent in this industry. So I think the opportunity, and we hear it when we talk to the market, there's a lot of, goodwill, there's a lot of support for new entrants to come into this space. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of theorizing about when and how technology should come in, but we just got to get it done, right? So, there is an environmental issue. There's a planet that's on fire. We need to do something about it. We need to address it. We need to be realistic and credible in terms of how to get there. We think that the battery electric option is achievable with the hybrid architecture still this decade to deliver a range that has commercial viability. But we just got to get it done. And we're in an industry where we just accept status quo a lot. I was talking to somebody recently about reserves. The minute you talk about reserves, that's a safety thing. But time-based reserves was a 1970s regulation that sort of came out of the 1940s, where people were tapping fuel gauges to understand, how much fuel they had left. Is there a moment now that we should sort of look at disruptive, or through a disruptive lens, at some of the points in the industry where we can make changes? So I think collectively, if we just keep sitting on our hands and just, accepting the status quo, this regional segment is in a decline. So we need to kind of hustle, we need to change things. And we certainly are looking for a lot of support. We're nobodies, right, in the big scheme of things, but we want to put our hands up. We want to look for policymakers to include us at the table. A lot of talk about SAF. You spoke about SAF. What about battery electric in terms of grants for supporting technology? What about hydrogen? We're not saying one is going to be the winner, one is the loser. All these technologies will have a place. So we want the industry to embrace it, to welcome it and support.
So those are clear appeals to the regulators to rethink their paradigm about things like reserves and about things like...
Just be open for the debate. I mean, we've heard a lot about pilots. We know that the issue here in the room about the hours. But there are many things, I think, that if we just stop and pause and look, is there ways to make our industry a little bit more effective, efficient, and why not have that debate? It's not to say that we're proposing unsafe forms of operation. Of course we're not. But I think we should have the debate.
So we spoke about fully electric battery-powered and hydrogen electric hybrid systems, and all of them promise a new golden age of aviation. Which holds more opportunity? Is this a race? Like, is one going to win out over the other, or is there room for everyone? Ross, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, on the stage you've got two different approaches, but there's really two different markets as well. I mean, what Simon is proposing is an airplane that flies underneath the existing regional flying today. It doesn't fly as far as our aircraft do today, and it doesn't carry as many passengers. What Val proposes is something that you can put that engine onto our airplane, right? And so you would be able to fly the regional network you fly today with our airplane with a new engine. So I think it's not really about which one wins, it's really about getting the right technology for the right markets and applying that. And we know that CRJ 700, 900 work for the market. They've been working for a long time. We know the Embraer 175 works for the market. Now it's about how do you adapt those airplane platforms to make sure they have the right engine going forward to serve the market. Because ultimately, what all of the airlines in the room want is they want an airplane that in the future they can operate at a lower cost, with a lower footprint, but doing the same network they do today. One of the problems, and I spent 20 years selling turboprops and jets. One of the problems you get when you have a turboprop in the market is that it doesn't fly as fast, right? So you can't put it in the network as simply. Your pilot costs end up being higher because the pilot's flying for longer. So you've got a lot of issues if you really go to a different sort of platform. What Val offers for our platform is really extended life of a product that everybody knows and they use. And so I think it's not so much about a race, it's really about pick the right technology for the right market, and there will be multiple technologies that work.
It's really we look at this as a segmentation over time, right? So if you look at sort of the ranges and the size of aircraft and look at the different fuel types, we think what's going to happen is, of course, SAF is what we can use today, especially in large aircraft. So that's going to take a lot of market share initially, but over time, that market share will move to the fundamentally more efficient and better approaches. And for sort of small aircraft, relatively infrequent use, and shorter distances, this is going to be a battery electric approach. For longer missions, larger aircraft, this is going to be hydrogen-based, and there is a debate now, and we have some healthy discussions with Airbus, our Airbus friends as well, on this, is how much of the hydrogen story will be hydrogen combustion in the turbines versus hydrogen electric, like what we do. We think we can run, with our technology over time, we can run any size aircraft. It will take us 20 years to get there, probably from the technology perspective, but there are no physical reasons, right? So we have a great science team on our team at ZeroAvia that we're building in-house fuel cell systems, power electronics, and motors. We know our stuff. And clearly, as you see from very sophisticated investors that are coming into our rounds, that really there are no fundamental barriers for us to deploy this technology in larger and larger aircraft. It will just take time. So segmentation over time.
I'd like to bring Susanna back into the discussion here. There's a shot across the bow against ATR here. It's a household name in many parts of the world, but not here. And why have turboprops fallen out of favor in the US? You mentioned some of the improvements that you're making, some of the new technologies that you're bringing into the aircraft. I mean, how can you convince a US audience that it's an aircraft of the future?
So US was the country where we have observed the most important impact of the jet mania for past 20 years. We see like two aspects of this jet mania. Well, turboprops fleet literally disappeared, or a couple of Sub 340s or Dash 8s which are still flying with a smaller cross section, with a tiny cabin. So the passenger experience on board was not very exciting. And then the second aspect was also the propeller. So maybe some of you remember 2016, we have bring 72-600, so latest generation of our aircraft across US. We spent 2 weeks flying around. We've been also here in Washington. So maybe some of you have experienced the new passenger experience with 18 inches seat, which is equivalent to long-range aircraft with a large overhead bin. And all feedbacks we have received here from airlines, from investors, lessors, institutions, was that, wow, that's really a great passenger experience. And we have also faced similar phenomenon in other regions, like in Japan, where the people is very tech oriented. And we understood that there was some misunderstanding on the technology which is behind the turboprop aircraft and the jet aircraft. So, you know, turboprop is not anymore DC-free from the past. The core of the engine, a turbine, compressor is exactly the same for both technology. Both engines have blades, but the diameter and number of blades differ. And then how the engine is integrated and the movement is created. Well, turboprop created the traction, and traction is more efficient for short distances, for low speed. So this is like a design choice. But when you educate travelers, and what we have done in cooperation with different airlines which are flying our aircraft, we have co-worked on like a small brochures, onboard brochures, but also organize co-events at the airport with the airline where we have educated and explained to the traveler population. And now we have 200 operators around the world. In Japan, we have 20 aircraft flying around, and the airlines are ordering every year. There is a huge potential to raise number to 100. So passenger perception is something we can overcome. However, we need to work together. So we need you to make it happen.
Ross.
Look, the turboprop's fine for certain markets, right? And like I said, I sold turboprops for a long time. Suzanne and I competed on turboprop campaigns. The issue is it doesn't really fit in the network in the US, right? So it's an economic and operations issue. It fits in places below that network. So it can operate in cargo and it can operate in sort of niche markets. We had, when I was with a former company, Dash 8s that were operating at a regional, and eventually they decided it no longer worked for them because they had to maintain 2 fleets to do the network, because a turboprop cannot fly the long flights that a regional jet can. And so then you end up having to maintain 2 fleets with all of the problems that creates with, you know, stocking 2 sets of parts. You have 2 different pilot pools. You have, when you're short of pilots, you can't have a system where you have a first officer on a turboprop, then he goes to a training event to become a first officer on a regional jet. Then he goes through a training event to become a first officer on a turboprop. Then he goes through another training event to become a captain on a jet. It doesn't work. And that one airline gave up and just now flies all jets. And so it's economics. You know, in a pilot shortage environment, you can't have at a mainline network pilots who have to fly 20 minutes longer to do the same flight, right? That's going to cost you. It'll be, you know, much more difficult to manage your pilot pool if you have 2 fleet types, if you have a fleet type that doesn't fit into the network exactly the same. The big benefit of regional jets when we started selling them 25 plus years ago was you could put a regional jet on the same route to fly the same flight time as a 737. So you could take a 737 out if you didn't have the appropriate passengers, and you put the regional jet in. No issue. It hits the same bank. It leaves at the same time in the morning. It is perfect to do that. So in the US network, regional jets are really the solution. They'll always be the solution for regional places in the country. The question really isn't, can we find some other aircraft? It's really, how do we make regional jets more economical, more sustainable in the future? And that's what we're working with other partners on doing, and making sure the fleet that exists today flies.
Maybe I can complete. It's
quick
also
response, yeah.
about the restore the regional connectivity, because if we talk about 800 nautical miles, of course, turboprop is not really adapted. Even if in our operator base we have a couple of flying those distances on a couple of routes. Nevertheless, if we talk about up to 500 nautical miles, the time difference is not really so huge. And even now, the people in some communities, they don't have the air connectivity. They cannot do like a day trip because they have to drive 12 hours, 8 hours to access the nearest airport. So I believe that we have to tackle it from the different perspective about the servicing communities and provide the real traveling experience and commodity for our travelers, for our passengers. Because at the end, even the manufacturers, we are working for them. They are helping us to do a business.
I think the regional connectivity point is critical for the propeller planes, and that's where, by the way, there are other factors, right? Economic factors one, but also the ground pollution, ground noise, significant issues for the expansion of these networks and sort of restoring the regional connectivity, and that's where the electrified technologies help quite a bit, right? So no ground pollution, and air resource boards and air quality districts are happy about that. And then much lower noise footprint, and creates incentive for the propeller manufacturers to actually improve the noise signatures. And we're working with several partners already, like Hartzell and a few others, to reduce the noise footprint of the propellers when they're mated to electric engines, and everybody wins as a result. And we can bring this regional connectivity that Senator Cruz was talking about at better economics and make it much better.
So I have a dozen more questions from all the things that you just said, but I'd like to open it up to the audience. Is there anyone, do you have any questions for our panel about this topic? Anyone? Anyone? No? No questions? Yes, sir.
Dan from ATR. Val, I'd like to ask you, at what point in the future do you think the cost, unit cost level of operating at 70 seats turboprop with H2 fuel cells is going to be about equivalent to jet fuel today in a kind of market with high taxes on jet fuel?
Can you just repeat the question
great
so that
question.
they understand?
So the question is when the economics of the on the seat mile basis or pound mile basis for ATR 72 with our engines would be equal to the jet fuel. Making certain assumptions about the jet fuel price trajectory, sort of inflation, basically inflation rate. We think that 2027, 2028 will be the crossover point. And that's part of the reason why we also are pushing for entry into service around the same time frame for this size vehicles. And the reason for that is, again, higher efficiency of the power plants and the ability to effectively channel what is becoming free or near free renewable energy on board the aircraft with hydrogen, right? You cannot really do this with any other carrier. And as we all know, in the last 10 years or so, the price of, or 15 years, price of renewable energy input has reduced dramatically. Now, the renewable power plants are the cheapest power plants you can build in terms of the fully levelized cost of energy, and it's improving further, right? So you effectively have zero marginal cost of fuel. It's all capex, and it's reducing quite heavily. So 2027, 28, and the spread is going to go beyond that going forward.
Any more questions from the audience? No. So I've got one final question, if I can just ask our panelists just to, one final question, we're running out of time. So the answers, please, short. What can North America learn from other regions on sustainability, especially in the regional fleet, in the regional connections? Is there anything that we can look to, I don't know, Europe or Asia or somewhere else that we can learn and try and implement here? I'm going to start with Nigel.
Well, certainly Europe is leading the way in terms of the environment and looking towards the new technologies that are out there. I think with the emphasis that they've put on the environment and the focus that they've given to it, I'd like to see that here. Certainly we at Embraer have looked at this, and while we have individuals here that have banked on certain technologies, we're looking across at all the technologies, and we're going to be implementing all of these going forward in our Energia. So we think, again, to answer your question, what Europe has to offer, we just need to be more focused here, I think. We're behind, quite frankly, here in the US, but I think that's what we need to adopt.
Simon?
We see the ecosystem play. So you need a lot of players coming together, working collaboratively to make this happen. So in the Nordics, for example, you have local government, the airport authority, the airlines, all the infrastructure that's required to make it happen is coming together, and we're seeing it. We have some use cases already. So I think that's the unlock, where you get everyone in the room with the same goal, and things can happen. So.
I think on the same goal, I joining you, Simon, but also a local solution to the local problem. So helping those communities to be again connected to the rest of the country and then the rest of the world. So a local solution. And bigger is not always better.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think on our side, policy and regulatory probably is the biggest one. And as Simon mentioned, in Europe, we see a lot more sort of concentrated, coordinated push towards these things. And it's from certification to what the right metrics to use to evaluate environmental benefits of all these technologies. The government is a little bit more thoughtful and analytical about how to think about different technologies. So we need more of this here.
I think the lesson we should learn is from Europe, and it's not a what to do, it's a what not to do. And that is, in Europe, they've decided to over-regulate regional industry. So they take away slots at airports, that impacts regional. They decide to not allow flights domestically in France if the train can match 2.5 hours. So don't do that. So what we have to do to prevent that is we have to make sure we carry the message that regional aviation is important. It's important to the country. But more than that, if a sustainable solution is coming, it's coming in regional first. So if you don't have a healthy regional industry, if you overregulate it and underinvest in it, then it will be harmed and sustainable aviation won't come as quickly.
I think that's a great note to end on, and thanks for your contrary opinions. I want to thank my panelists for a great discussion. Thank you guys for your attention, and let's move on to the next panel. Thanks so much.